Welcome to Vacuforming 101.
Hey! Back off, mister. This is my show. Get your own. Why, I oughta.
Sorry about that. Well, as I'm sure you've surmised from the title and from that guy spilling the beans, today's show is going to be about vacuforming, specifically canopies. I am planning a full vacuform kit build in a later video, but for today, I'm just going to be using aftermarket canopies and molding your own with that. But before I get into the video, I just want to offer my sincere thanks for everyone that endured my first video, and also for the many comments and subscribers. It is very much appreciated. You have, in fact, encouraged me to carry on with this video thing. So if it all goes horribly wrong, it's your fault. So, just what is vacuforming? Well, the Oxford Big Book of Fancy Words defines it as
a ponderous, dull-witted bipedal creature, greedy, short-sighted, with a penchant for lining its own pockets. It has no interest in the welfare of the citizens it governs, save those wealthy individuals of a similar greedy and self-serving nature. Terribly sorry. That's the definition of a politician. One in particular, not mentioning any names. But enough about Justin Trudeau. Let's get back to vacuforming, shall we?
Now, why in the world would I bother with all the trouble of a vacuform canopy, you ask? Good question. Thanks for asking. Well, there's a couple of reasons I like them. Number one, they're much thinner than the canopies you get in injection molded kits. Even in the best kits, unfortunately, the injection molding process does have its limitations, and the canopies will just be a little bit too thick for the scale. Along with that, of course, you get optical distortion. A vacuform canopy is much thinner, much closer to scale thickness, and are crystal clear with much less optical distortion. They just look better, in my opinion. Number two, kit canopies often have inaccuracies, and using an aftermarket canopy or creating your own will give you an opportunity to correct those inaccuracies. That's two reasons. I'm sure there are more, but those are the main two reasons I really like them. Admittedly, vacuform canopies do require a little more effort than injection molded ones. You have to cut them out of the backing sheet and sand them to size very carefully. And because they are so thin, it gives you much less gluing area to get them stuck onto your model. So yeah, they're a little finicky to deal with, but I think it's worth the effort.
Alrighty then, let's talk about aftermarket canopies. There are many different kinds available from many different manufacturers. My personal favorites are the canopies from Falcon. These guys are one of the earliest and, in my opinion, still one of the best producers of vacuform canopies. They're thin, crystal clear, and they fit perfectly. They have a vast range of these sets for RAF, Fleet Air Arm, U.S. Army Air Force, U.S. Navy, Luftwaffe, of course, Russian, French, Italian, Japanese, lots of different kinds available in 72nd and 148 scale. They're great canopies and probably my most used ones. Plus, they were also produced by Squadron Signal. Now, the advantage of these is that, number one, they offered canopies that, as far as I know, were not offered by Falcon, such as 132nd scale and even 124th scale canopies. The other advantage is that because they offered them in singles, you didn't have to buy an entire Falcon canopy set just to get the one canopy you needed. You could just buy one or two. Now, I know that Squadron went through some difficulty and have recently risen from the ashes. Whether these are still in their range or will be resurrected, if not, I'm not sure. I really hope they are because, as I say, they are produced by Falcon, so they're excellent. There are other canopies available from Pavla. Not quite as good, in my opinion. Plastic is a little softer, a little bit thicker, but they do have a vast range and many types that aren't available from Falcon or Squadron. especially the Eastern Bloc type stuff. So, well worth it. And these guys don't exist anymore either, I believe. So, get them while you can. What else we got here? Lots. Mark 1 models. They do a very small but very good range in 72nd scale, maybe other scales. Tasman. These are probably produced by Falcon as well. Ring gun. They do quite an extensive range in 1/144th scale and 72nd. I think they also do some 48 scale canopies. Rob Taurus. Now, I'm not sure. I think they may be produced by Falcon, actually. And the reason I think that is because the P-47 I recently built, I happen to have a Rob Taurus canopy for it, and then discovered I had another one in a Falcon set. When I compared them, however, they were virtually identical. So, at least in that case, I'm pretty sure that Falcon made that canopy. But again, Rob Taurus has quite a range and an awful lot that are not available from any other manufacturer, especially post-war jets. So they're definitely a good range to check out. And I also have one here from, and I didn't know these guys made canopies until recently, Quinta Studio. The advantage of this is you get this nice little Tupperware box to keep your lunch in afterwards. Very useful. Here are a few examples for you to look at. This is a Falcon canopy on a Hasegawa Mustang. This is another Falcon canopy on a Dragon Dornier 335. And you can really see here how well that windscreen fits. It's really very, very good. This Hasegawa Nakajima Ki-44 in 72nd scale. Not only did Falcon produce the canopy, they also give you the little landing light cover. Very nice. Tamiya P-47, 72nd scale again, and a Falcon canopy once more. And here's an example of a Pavla canopy on an Airfix Spitfire Mark 9. This is what a typical Falcon canopy set looks like. Another thing I like about these guys is their quality control is really, really good. I don't know if you can see here, but there was actually a little bit of a flaw in one of these canopies, and so they've actually included replacements taped in there. You can see that there. Excellent. There's the instructions. They give you detailed instructions on any mods you need to the recommended kit. A superb package. Well recommended. And of course, there are many other canopies available from other companies. There's a couple of Air Club ones there. They did some. And then we've got, we got here, Sun Detail. Some there. HR model. Oh, there's a couple of Rob Taurus. I forgot to show you those earlier. That's what they look like. Airwaves and Barracuda Cast. I don't actually have one of their canopies. Sorry. But here's some wheels to look at. They do canopies too. So, you have a veritable cornucopia of aftermarket Vacuform canopies to choose from. But what happens if your latest project is something really obscure? The Curtiss XF7A9-2.5 Nose Goblin reconnaissance plane. You've looked everywhere. There's no canopy available for this puppy. Kit canopy isn't very good either. What will you do? What will you do? I don't know. What are you looking at me for? Oh, sorry. I'm supposed to tell you. Right. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to make your own with one of these. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But first, a word from our sponsor. You can't argue with that, can you? Thanks, Andy. Alrighty then, the Mattel Vac-U-Form. What is it, and what can we do with it? Well, it's a really cool contraption that came out in the 1960s, and it enabled kids to make their own toys using the Vacuform process. I got mine about a dozen or so years ago, and I think I paid about the $100 US mark for it at the time. I'm sure they're still available. I haven't checked recently, but have a look on everybody's favorite auction site. You know who I mean. And you never know. you might be able to pick one up. They're well worth tracking down if you can find one. Now, the really neat thing about the one I managed to get is it came with the original box, which I think is probably pretty rare. Now, it's obviously not in great condition, but the fact that it still exists at all is, well, it's pretty neat, I think. So, let's have a look at it then. There we go. There it is. Let's get that in the picture there. So, I don't know if you can see, but in this little circle here, it says, copyright 1962, Mattel Inc. So, this baby's older than I am, which is kind of a refreshing change. Look at the happy little urchin and all the neat things that he's made. Huh? There's one happy guy, tell you. Molds plastic, makes most anything. That's right. Even in the 1960s, kids could make their own thermonuclear bombs with this. Well, maybe not. If we look on the back here, we can see it's got an original sales sticker. 1964. Oh, must have been some happy camper that Christmas, eh? I know I would have been. But, even better than all that, comes with the original insert and most of the original molds. How cool is that? So what do we got here? Try to do this without dropping it everywhere. We got an airplane we can make. Here's a race car. Mold one of those babies. There's also lots of little plastic wheels for said race car. Cool. An official Groucho Marx nose. What kid would want to be without that, huh? There you go. There's a sprue with some noses and mustaches and ears and things on there. Oh, that's fun. Picture frame. We got a boat hull. Somewhere there's, there we go. The upper deck for the boat. And the pièce de résistance. The original tube of glue. Cool. All right. So, that's really neat. From a nostalgia point of view, yeah, awesome. From a modeling point of view, perhaps not so useful. But it also came with a lot of the original plastic. And I thought, well, what the hell? I've got it. I'm going to try this out. So I molded a few of these, and I'm going to say, it actually worked pretty well. Here's the boat and the deck. Cut them out, glue them together. Kind of cool. The airplane. That seemed to work well. There you go. I have a couple of sheets of plastic left. Didn't use these ones because I like the color so much. That's it. Now, so let's have a look at the machine itself then. This is the Mattel Vac-U-Former machine here. You got your heating element. Just use the boat's hull as a mold. This is your swinging stage. Your plastic would go in here. The idea is you plug it in, heats your plastic up there. As soon as that's nice and soft, you would flip that over onto the mold. Pump this handle like mad. That's your suction. It sucks the heated plastic down over the mold, creating your part. Don't you love the 60s? Nobody worried about electrocuting their kids or burning their little fingers. There was no litigation to bother about. It was a simpler time. One other thing I want to mention before I get to actually molding a canopy is that soon after I got my Mattel Vac-U-Form, I found someone online was doing a little upgrade kit for them. Now, I apologize. I have no idea who it was, how I came across it, if they're still being produced. I don't know. I think I paid about $20 US, maybe 25 with shipping to the UK, where I was living at the time. But the kit consisted of a few items. Number one was a new platform, or stage, or platen, or whatever you want to call this thing, that fits in here. Oh, not in there. In here. So that is where your form would sit on top of, and obviously it's got bigger holes than the original Mattel supplied one. So you get a bit better airflow with that one, I think. And of course, if you found some material like this, there's no reason you couldn't make your own of that. I'm just kind of lazy and I just couldn't be bothered. So there's that. It also came with some new little rubber feet things. It came with a tube of silicone lubricant to just get a better seal in your piston. That's your, there we go. Piston that moves up and down, that creates your suction. So bit of lubricant, get a better seal, and also some silicone sealant for the top there to stop any air leaks and that. The other thing it came with, and this rubber nipple here, is basically a one-way flapper valve, so it lets the air out but not back in again. So it came with a replacement for one of those, because obviously a 60-plus-year-old machine, the rubber parts are going to get a little bit worn out and not quite as effective. So I find this did improve the machine quite a bit. And then there's one other thing it came with. Oh, okay, two other things. Instructions, simple sheet of instructions. And this here, which is basically a little square or rectangle of aluminum with a knobby on there. And what that does is, while you're heating your plastic up, this would sit on top, and it helps to just hold the heat in and get your plastic just a little bit softer than you would do without that. And there is a very good reason why this will become important, which I will show you during the demonstration. Alrighty then, let's get to molding us a canopy. For today's demonstration, I'm going to be using the canopy from a Williams Brothers 1/32 scale GB racer. Now, this is one I would typically replace with a Vacuform canopy. It's pretty clear, but it is, I don't know if you can see it, it is pretty thick, so you do get quite a bit of distortion with this. So a Vacuform will look much better, I think. Now, one thing I should mention, that the quality of your Vacuform canopy will only be as good as your master. So if this is rough and horrible, your Vacuform is going to be rough and horrible too. So spend a little time. I use this Tamiya polishing compound. I get this thing as crystal clear and as shiny as I possibly can to get a good Vacuform out of it. Obviously, use your favorite plastic polish or your favorite techniques. So that's number one. Number two, you need a way to mount it solidly to the platform on the machine. So you can use modeling clay, which is what I'm going to use for this. But the other way is, and this is one I did for another project, which I will show you later. This is for a Revell 1/144th scale Tomcat. As you can see there, I've just made a simple little mounting platform thingy out of sheet plastic, used 5-minute epoxy to attach it to the canopy. There is another thing with this type of canopy, which I'll also go into later, and that has to do with the shape of it and how do we have to treat this in order to get a good molding out of it. But I'll get to that in a bit. So for today, canopy mounting method, loop in there, and we'll mount it to the machine. There's the canopy pressed firmly down onto the molding platform, and we need to make sure that that's quite solid, quite rigid, so it doesn't move when you drape the heated sheet plastic over it. Now, there's a couple of points to note here. Number one, we need a bit of a gap between the bottom of your canopy and the top of the molding platform. And I've actually shaped the modeling clay to give a bit of a concave shape in there, a little bit of an undercut. The reason we need that is so that when the plastic gets sucked in around the mold, we get a nice sharp edge along the bottom. Without that gap, it would just sort of drape in a very undefined concave shape and essentially ruin your molding. And the other point to note is we've got quite a sharp vertical edge on the back here, and without bulging the modeling clay out to make that a smooth transition, there's a tendency for that edge to cut through your sheet plastic, ruin the vacuum, and once again, ruin the molding. With the Revell Tomcat canopy I showed you earlier, I would just stick this to the platform with double-sided tape. Not at the same time as this one, obviously, I'd do them separately. But because this is quite a small canopy and quite shallow compared to that one, we don't really need to worry so much about this back edge and the undercut. Although we still need a space in there, we don't really need to worry about the canopy cutting through the sheet plastic because it's quite small. What we do need to be concerned with, and I did sort of allude to this before, is the shape of this, and that is that where the frame meets the clear canopy, there is a straight concave line. And if we don't treat that accordingly, there is no way for the air to escape out of there, and therefore our plastic will not get sucked into that shape, and we will once again ruin our molding. So all I've done is I've just drilled a series of fine holes along that line with a pin vise, and that allows the air to escape and your plastic to suck into that space and create a nice accurate canopy. Okie dokie. The canopy is firmly mounted to the machine. We're ready to go ahead, but obviously we need something to mold with. I'm just using a piece of clear acetate. I think it's acetate. I don't know. It's clear. What I'm using. Use whatever material is appropriate for your project. Now, as I mentioned previously, I was fortunate enough to get some of the original plastic with my machine, so I just use this as a template to cut my new piece. It's 3 inches by 3.5 inches if you're interested. Now, the other thing you'll notice about this piece is that there are holes all the way around the edges of it. Those holes fit into or over these pins on the inside edges of one part of our swing stage. So when you drop your plastic in there, the other part of the swing stage, which has corresponding holes in to fit on those pins, will flip over and clamp your plastic firmly in place. Now, obviously, it's going to be a little bit tedious to have to drill holes all the way around your material every time you want to mold something. And that's where this little item comes in that I mentioned before. So by keeping this on here while your plastic is heating up, it will get it just that little bit softer, and that way, when you close the two items together, or the two pieces of the stage together, it will actually force the pins through the plastic into the holes and hold it firmly in place without the need to drill holes all the way around your material. Now, obviously, you don't have to use this. A piece of aluminum foil placed over top of your reheating element will do the same job just as nicely, I'm sure. Okay, plug the machine in, so our element is starting to heat up. There is no actual switch on this machine. It just basically starts when you plug it in. One thing I do need to mention is you need to make sure that your mold is as clean as possible, because even the tiniest speck of dust in there will ruin your molding because it'll show up in there. So I do that. And the same with the actual plastic sheet. I usually take a piece of masking tape or something and just press it to both sides to make sure I get all the dust out of there. So I'm going to drop that in there. Put our other piece on top. Obviously, that's not going to go in until the plastic softens up, and then once that happens, we can press that more firmly together. And as I said before, that will clamp your sheet in place very nicely. And we just need our handy dandy little upgrade piece here. Okay, so it takes a few minutes for that to heat up and soften the plastic. I usually give it about 10 minutes before I check it and see how we're doing. In the meantime, you've got a bit of time to kill, so you can, I don't know, feed the cat. What? Come on, boo-boo. I thought you loved bananas. Catch up on your housework. Maybe do a little light dusting. Read a book. Oh, son of a... Or just relax and chill out. Okay, I've given that just a little over 8 minutes, actually, so let's see how we're doing here. Look. A little poke. I use the eraser end of a pencil because I don't want to burn my fingers. That's looking pretty good, pretty soft, so I'm just going to clamp those two together, make sure my plastic is nice and firm. Down there. Give my little canopy one last little brush, make sure I get the dust out of it. Okay, this is it. Moment of truth. Here we go. Put that on there. A few pumps. And basically you want to just keep doing that until the plastic is nice and cool on you. Okay, that's looking really good actually. I think we got a good molding there. Now, The only way we're going to get this canopy out of there is to actually cut it out, which is what I would do anyways, just to cut it out while it's still on the form. And you just need very light pressure. Don't try and cut all the way through, just score it. Yeah, all the way around. And the technique is the same whether you're using aftermarket canopies or one you molded yourself. You just go all the way around. Actually, the plastic is stretched quite thin on the bottom of this, so even though I'm trying to go light and scoring it, it is actually going right through anyway, which is fine. That works. Like that. Along there. And then just the back part here. That seems to be a little bit thicker, taking time. There we go. And I think, in theory, it should get out of there. There we go. And that's it. There we go. And take our master out, get rid of that modeling clay, and we're good to go. Alrighty, there we go. It's my original one on the left, my left, and the Vacuform one here. Don't know if you can see that, but obviously this is thicker. You get a little bit more distortion with that. This is nice and crystal clear. It looks great to me anyway. I like it. So what I would do from here is I would just sand the edges, test fitting it to the model all the time, make sure it fits. Once I'm happy with the fit, I would use a little bit of diluted white glue to hold it in place. And then I personally would use super glue or cyanoacrylate. Cyanoacrylate. That's it. Super glue. Stick it in place. And now that will frost your plastic because of the fumes from the cyanoacrylate. Yeah, I got it that time. So first, dip it in this stuff, which is now called Pledge, used to be called Future. In the UK, it's called Clear. But that will form a barrier, and it'll also make your canopy even clearer. It'll be nice and crystal clear. It'll look fantastic, and it'll stop it getting frosted up from the cyanoacrylate. The super glue fumes. Damn it. Cyanoacrylate. Thank you. Okay, so that's it. Hope you got something out of that. That's how you Vacuform canopies. And thanks so much for watching. As always, thank you to our sponsors, Thunderbird Models, aka me, and Jello Wax Lock Car Palace. And I promise the next video won't take quite as long as this one did. Bye-bye.